Hi, Elizabeth. Joe Zongle here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Hi, Joe.
Great.
Yep,
Okay.
we're good. Okay, this meeting is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please, Elizabeth.
Mayor McFadden,
Present.
Trustee McHugh,
Present.
Trustee Casker,
Present.
Trustee Shaw. I think she's here.
Just logged on, so.
Trustee Gluck
Present.
and Trustee Shaw.
She's connecting to the audio.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I can't see her.
No problem. Okay, happy holidays and welcome. Let's talk about this storm a minute. We're prepared for the severe weather, and we're supposedly going to get about 12 inches, but it's up and down. I know Philadelphia is getting snow right now, so it doesn't look like this is going to blow over, unfortunately. All right, so a little housekeeping. The waste pickup is canceled for Thursday. The village office is going to be closed tomorrow and potentially for the rest of the week. DPW and police have extra manpower standing by if we need to bring in some overtime. And if you have any special safety requirements, such as the need for oxygen or insulin, special medication,
Look who's there, LBC.
who would like a, hold on with that. Let's see, Brian, could you turn off your mic, please? You know, if you need a safety check for yourself, a loved one, or a pet, you know, don't hesitate to contact the police department today. It's 351-4741. And I can tell you firsthand that these safety checks are important. The police have, you know, taken care of some business that they wouldn't have been able to if there was no safety check called. As you know, the COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations have increased in Orange County. So we're advising everybody to be careful and to continue following the CDC guidelines. Moving on. I have a guest today. He's the village engineer that's dealing with our sewer maintenance and repair program. His name is Joe Zongle. He's gonna present, he's already presented to the board a memorandum for his recommendations moving forward. We are at a fork in the road here. So I submitted that memo to the trustees, and I'm sure the trustees have questions. So Joe, if you just want to introduce yourself, summarize your recommendations, and then we'll ask some questions.
Sure, very good. Thank you, Mayor McFadden, the board, and the rest of the Tuxedo Park residents. I appreciate you having me for a few moments. I'm a team leader out of Weston & Sampson's Albany office, but I've been working with the village for my entire tenure with the Weston & Sampson, which has been a little over 12 years. I've been heavily involved with this SSCS, the sewer remediation project, among other projects within the village. I provided a memorandum. Hopefully the board has had a chance to read it. I tried to be as clear and concise as I could. There's a couple of different issues that are going on, so I apologize for the length of it. I'll I'll quickly summarize it and then I'll open it up to the board for questions that you might have. So little background, the village has a speedies permit, which is a discharge permit to operate and maintain the wastewater treatment plant and the associated collection system. The village has an I&I problem within the collection system, I&I meaning infiltration and inflow. So that is infiltration of groundwater into the sanitary sewer system and inflow, which is illicit connections, sump pumps, things like that. Basically non-sanitary flows into the collection system. Reason this is an issue, it increases the flow through the plant, increases chemical usage, and dilutes down the ability to treat the wastewater. As part of the village's permit, they're required by the DEC to remediate some of the I&I within the system. This is something that's been going on for a number of years. We're currently under construction to remediate sections in what are known as subbasins 2 and 10. We broke this village's sewer system down into 17 sub areas, if you will. So the project is currently under construction. Some of you might have seen Aerial Construction trucks out there. So I wanted to start with an update on that project. So they are nearing completion there. As of December, they're anticipating to be substantially complete on their contract. They've completed 26 of the 31 manholes that need to be rehabilitated. 4 remain and 1 will be returned as a credit to the contract. A total of 869 linear feet of 8-inch sewer liners have been installed. The scheduled estimate was 900 feet. We want to go a little bit higher in the event that some of the record mapping is off by a few feet. So a slight credit will be issued back to the village for that section as well. For the 6-inch pipe, out of the estimated 2,775 feet, 1,765 have been completed with 469 remaining, with a credit of 541 feet being returned.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Joe. Joe, can you stop talking, please? Because you're muted. I'm sorry. Joe, I'm sorry about that. I accidentally muted you. So can you
Okay.
just repeat just like about a minute, less than just a few seconds ago? I'm sorry.
Okay, so I apologize if you're hearing this for the second time. What I was saying was that the majority of the manholes have been rehabilitated. All of the 8-inch pipe scheduled to be lined has been lined with a credit coming back on the contract there. And that the 6-inch sewer lining is almost complete with two sections remaining. Overall, there was a change order that was issued early in the project, a credit change order for reduction in work based on field conditions that were found. Based on our financial estimate, which we included at the end of the memo, we are anticipating a credit back to the village of $121,815 is our current projection right now. The overall project value was originally at $451,562 was the bid price. This project is being funded partially by a New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation grant, which covers up to 25% of the costs, and the rest is being financed through low and no interest loans through the EFC.
Hey, Joe, what's the total we've received now, and what's the total contract?
Sure. So that was included as the second to last page. There's a financial summary there, but the original bid price was $451,552. The total, let's see, and we're expecting a credit back at the end of the contract. So we're projecting what's been done and what's anticipated to be completed, a credit coming back in the value of $121,815.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for the summary. Joe, you're doing a great job, you and your crew. I really appreciate it. Very responsive to me and the other trustees and Elizabeth, and we really appreciate it. I'll open it up to the board. Paul, Trustee Gluck, do you have any comments or questions? You need to turn your mic on.
Yeah,
There you go. Live and clear.
I think we were cutting Joe a little bit short. He was going through what the project had been to date, right, with the ongoing project with Arnold, but he had not yet gotten to summarizing his recommendations and the reason for them. So I have a little bit of a hard time plowing through the rather detailed report here, though I appreciate that. But perhaps for others who might have also had that same difficulty, and for the public, he could just take another 5 minutes and sort of summarize what the recommendations are and why he's making them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Joe?
Yep. I'll continue. So within this project, there was a section of pipe that was found to be 4-inch in diameter as opposed to 6-inch that the record plans indicated. We have discussed this with the contractor. This section of pipe, which we included in inset map, has relatively low infiltration that was discovered during the investigative phase. The contractors come back with a very high price for remediating that work, which is not uncommon. 4-inch pipe actually becomes more difficult to install with increased risk as compared to larger diameter pipe. I witnessed this firsthand. We had a similar remediation project on Camp Comfort Road in 2012. The contractor screwed it up and had to replace 400 feet of it on his own dime by digging it and replacing it. So there would be a potential increase for this area. The other alternatives we explored with the contractor was replacing this pipe with brand new PVC pipe. So the pipes that we're addressing, I should back up, are clay tile pipe. These are the original installation from back in the early 19th century, 20th century rather. It's 2 to 3 foot clay section of pipe that has no gaskets, so they're loose joints. So they're designed for infiltration and exfiltration, water entering in and out of the pipes. So they're inherently fraught with potential for leakage. So current design standards, you would recommend ductile iron pipe or PVC pipe, which are gasketed joints and typically wadded pipe. The contractor provided a change order figure for that to replace the 175 feet with PVC pipe, which would also increase the contract by $50,000, eating into the credit that's due back to the village. What we are recommending is that the village not pursue remediating this small section of pipe, which is contributing a relatively small amount of I&I, and rather approach the DEC, who is mandating this project, and substitute it for a section within the village that hasn't been investigated yet, that is likely contributing a much higher quantity of I&I and will move to achieve the village's goals of getting more I&I reduction for the same value, holding the contract price that the contractors provided. To give you an order of magnitude, for 6-inch pipe, their unit price is $60 per linear foot. For 4-inch pipe, they're proposing $169 per linear foot. So it's almost 2.5 times higher. So with that as a backdrop, I wanted to discuss the proposed Overton subdivision. And so basically I'm gonna discuss 3 projects, and while they're technically unrelated, I think they all tie in together, and that'll be included in the recommendations. For the Overton subdivision project, there's been an agreement passed between the village and the applicant mandated by a DEC moratorium, that for every house that gets constructed that's adding to the sewer flow within the village, the applicant needs to provide compensation to do a 3-to-1 offset for infiltration inflow compared to the base sanitary flow. So for example, if a house contributes 300 gallons per day of sanitary flow, they need to compensate the village for 900 gallons worth of infiltration inflow somewhere else within the collection system of the village. John Ledwith and I had a conference call with the representatives from Overton, and we have identified 3 areas where they could potentially look to remediate this infiltration and inflow. These 3 areas that we've identified are what we refer to as trunk sewers. So the way that the village's collection system is set up, it all flows primarily by gravity. Everything flows down towards the lake, which is obviously where the lowest point is. The lake is essentially encircled with trunk sewers that go down to the wastewater treatment plant at the north end of the village. looking through the record maps, we found 3 areas that contain clay tile pipe. These clay tile pipe not only are potential sources for infiltration, but the reason that we've identified them is they are very near in proximity to the lake. They also have elevations that are either at or potentially below the water level of the lake, meaning that they are very susceptible to groundwater influence and could be significantly contributing to the village's I&I problem. One of the stipulations in the agreement with the Overton subdivision is that they need to remediate a section of sewer that is not scheduled or mandated by the DEC for the village to undertake as a project. So this sewer remediation project has a schedule for which sections of the sewer need to be addressed at a time. So the Overton project needs to go above and beyond whatever is previously committed to by the village. So that brings me to my 3rd point of my memo, which is the trunk sewer investigation remediation. Back in October, we were asked to provide the village with a proposal to investigate the clay tile sections of the trunk sewers. This proposal provided a menu, if you will, of remediation type activities. And it laid it out where we would inspect the manholes. We would conduct what's called flow isolation, where you, at nighttime, you plug one manhole and then go to the downstream manhole and measure the flow. The reason you do it at night is that's when you assume that base sanitary usage is at its minimum. So this would be between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. So everything measured during that time period would be considered to be extraneous flow. This is a very cost-effective way to measure and quantify flow within the sewers, which is something that the DEC is requiring. If it's determined that the sewer is contributing I&I, we then propose to come back with closed circuit television. You put a camera, a rover camera inside the sewer, and you're able to then inspect the sewer. You can inspect the structural condition. You can identify if there's active leaks and any other abnormalities within the sewer. What we're recommending is that since the Overton subdivision is only required to remediate 3,775 gallons per day of flow, which might sound excessive. The EPA classifies excessive infiltration to be anything over 4,000 gallons per day per inch mile. So it's a relatively small amount. So if the Overton project, if they were to investigate and remediate a section of sewer, you would likely only receive basically one manhole to manhole segment, and you would see very negligible impact to your system. What we are proposing is, by utilizing the proposal that we submitted in October, flow isolating these trunk sewers to determine if there is substantial I&I within those sewers. If so, then we would propose that we would camera those lines, only the ones that are determined to have excessive I&I, then meet with the DEC to see if there's an opportunity to substitute the line, the 4-inch line that is currently we're recommending not being addressed, and using the credit within the Arrow contract to remediate some of these trunk sewers. At the same time, this can be coordinated with the Overton project, and a legal agreement can be executed for partial reimbursement to satisfy their need to remediate I&I. So this way, the village can get significant reduction while the Overton project can meet their needs. The reason that we've identified the trunk sewers are twofold. One, there have been reported sewer overflows during high rain events, and that could pose a public health concern flowing into the lakes. Tuxedo Lake is the village's water supply. The reported overflow, from my understanding, was in Pond 3, the small pond in the middle. That then flows down to the Weewa Lake, which obviously has a bathing beach, so we want to try to avoid any contamination there. The other component of that is, earlier this year, the village received a notice of violation from the DEC because of continued excessive flows. They required that the village submit a work plan to address these items. So the DEC is saying that regardless of how this current construction project ends up, the village is obligated to investigate what are known as subbasins 5, 8, and 16. So subbasin 5 is near Tuxedo Road and Ridge Road and Pine Road. Subbasin 8 is on the southeastern portion of the village near Ridge Road. And subbasin 16 is between Tuxedo Lake and Weewa Lake, which is near Summit Road and East Summit Road. What we were able to do was put a clause in this work plan stating if the village were to find another significant source of I&I, that the village reserves the right to negotiate with the DEC to not investigate, design, and construct repairs to these areas if you were to remediate some other portion of the sewer system that was found to significantly contribute to the I&I problem. So that's why our office is recommending that the least costly option of flow isolating some of these suspect areas be considered for the upside potential of getting out of what could be costly engineering and construction repairs down the road that are obligated through the DEC. At the same time, this could potentially work in concert with the Overton subdivision. And since the current construction project is being funded by grant monies and through low and no interest loans with a credit right now of about $120,000, that money could then be applied towards these projects if they are found to be significant contributors to I&I. If they aren't, obviously the credit could go back to the village or it could be used in some other fashion. So that's the summary of my recommendations. Now I guess I'll open it to the floor for questions, which I'm sure you all probably have.
Let's see, Trustee Gluck, are you ready to go?
Couple actually. So just harping back to one element I want to be clear on. I think you had a reference to there being a reported sewage overflow. My understanding is that there were no reported sewage overflows. I think that's significant because, as you know, overflows have to be reported to the DEC. And the one instance of that I think was reported to the board was reviewed and was determined not to be an overflow. So I want to be very, very clear, and I hope you'll, correct the record and whatever documentation may exist to the effect of any, unless I'm mistaken, any reports of reported sewage overflows, because I don't think there were any. At least none.
Trustee Gluck, there was a visual inspection, and it was determined that there was an overflow.
No. Sorry.
I think let's go back and review the record on that, because the data and the documentation I saw, I think is to the contrary.
Sure, will do. Why don't we do that on a sidebar?
Okay. Second.
And then of course, if there's a discrepancy, we can always correct the record.
Absolutely. I'll correct the record if that is indeed the case. We don't actively monitor these. I was just reporting on information that I've been informed with.
You had a second question, Paul?
And that relates to Overton and the sharing of expenses with Overton. I want to be careful that we don't give away more than we have to here. And I think in the documentation I saw here, we were being a little generous with respect to Overton's obligations. Because, I was heavily involved in the negotiation of the I&I agreement, and I think the I&I agreement is very clear that it's Overton's responsibility to fully fund at its own cost and expense any I&I required by the DEC, reductions required by the DEC, and undertake any other actions at its cost and expense to satisfy the DEC to allow these lots to be connected. So while certainly cost sharing is a possibility, I think I would urge us all not to get too far down the road with an agreement and, too far down the road with incurring expenses unless we have an understanding with them that reflects the cost sharing to the, to the full extent that's reflected in those agreements. That was
So
my comment.
with regards to the cost sharing, the village can take one of two approaches. So you could leave it fully up to Overton, which is currently how they've been directed in the conversations that, not directed, but the conversations that John and I have had. It's been left to their own fruition.
Mhm.
We have identified the trunk sewers as potential sources of I&I, and then they are currently planning on providing a work plan to investigate, which will have to get reviewed by the village and then approved by the DEC. So every step that they do during the investigation, the results of the investigation, and the implementation of the repairs are currently the sole responsibility of Overton. However, the village is the permit holder through the DEC, so the village does have responsibility in that manner. My concern, or not concern, but the relatively low amount of I&I that they're actually required to remove would result in a very minimal project and would be very negligible in terms of achieving the village's goals of I&I removal. And whether you apply the credit for Harold's contract and decide to investigate the trunk sewers and include the Overton subdivision as part of that, or only use that money, if you decide to move forward and use that money to repair as much as you can with the available funds, the rest of it could then be turned over to Overton and they could do it separately as well. So they don't have to necessarily be intertwined, but they could, depending on how the board decides to act and what legal counsel advises.
I understand, and I'm actually do agree that I would prefer that the village do the work rather than Overton do the work. But I'm just suggesting let's all just be mindful that the cost of investigating and reaching a resolution with the DEC are all on sort of Overton's side of the docket, if you will. And it's not, if you go down this road and don't find anything, Overton, I think, is still responsible for a segment of those costs as well, because the agreement specifically includes the cost of investigation as well. Sorry, I'm done there.
Okay, any other trustees? Sir, Trustee McHugh, your mic is off. There you go.
Got it now?
In the interim,
All set.
can we just ask that the people who are not muted, mute, because we're getting feedback from
Oh, yes.
917, whatever that
Joanne
number
has asked
is.
if
and-
you're not in the conversation, please mute until public comment period. Thank you.
I guess I've got a couple of comments. First is I'm going to just echo Paul's. This was a discussion point with regard to the overflows. Jeff is responsible as the sewer plant maintenance officer to report any overflows on his report. He investigated the situation, did not submit a report because he did not see anything material there. So I agree with Paul. I think for the record, we should certainly document that. On the second point, your point number one, you go, the village periodically uses a consultant to analyze the water. That's not factually correct. We do it throughout the season with our lakes manager, and we monitor all three lakes. So I think just that, those things need to be correct just for the record, but I don't think it really changes the argument. With regard to the notice of violation, I assume you were referring to the April 9th, 2019, Joe, is that correct?
What are you doing?
Yes, that is correct. And
All
the
right.
resultant flow management plan that was submitted. As a result of
And
that.
you will concur with me, the response that we got from the DEC was that given we applied for the grant and we're moving forward on the second section of the I&I, that satisfied their requirement. And everything at the last board meeting, what we did was we approved the next phase of your firm doing the analysis to see how successful the I&I flow mitigation had been, correct?
That is correct, yes. So the flow management plan had 4 points to it. That proposal, which was approved, was point number 2. This was looking ahead to point number 4, which requires additional investigation for other subbasins once.
Correct, but I guess my point is slightly more nuanced, is we have a responsibility with regard to our Speedies permit and addressing our I&I flows. We've got certain parameters that or benchmarks we have to hit with the DEC. And we've done phase 1, didn't achieve them. Now we're doing phase 2. We need to do a post-mortem of that, see if we've achieved that success, and then depending if we've succeeded it, then theoretically we're in compliance with our Speedies permit. We don't need to do any more. Is that correct?
They say regardless of the results of the flow analysis study that subbasins 5, 8, and 16 will need to be investigated.
All right.
And I find it, my estimation is that it will be unlikely that at the completion of this project, the flows will be below the threshold to not necessitate further work. Reason being is the way that the village's sewer system is configured, there are a number of long private laterals. So the village is only taking care of the public sewer, which serves 2 or more private residences. Given the nature of the village and how spaced out the homes are, some private laterals exceed 1,000 feet with multiple manholes, and those are not being addressed, but they are contributing to I&I in the village. So I find it unlikely that even after the completion of this project, that the village's flows for a full calendar year will be sufficient, that the DEC will not require further action.
Understood, but I guess my argument is your analysis that the postmortem of what Arrold Engineering is going to be done at a high flow period, which is March, April of next year. Agreed?
Correct.
And what we've found out is that Overton wants to do their analysis at the same time, correct?
Correct.
So I'm a little bit concerned that we're just jumping the gun here, recognizing the fact, I think you've earmarked the 3 projects which we all think are the highest probability, but let's not spend money till we need to spend money. And I certainly accept all your arguments, but my view continues to be, and this is what we discussion we had last month, is let's do your postmortem analysis of how successful Arrold's project has been. Then we can reassess it, and we might have greater leverage with Overton too, because they might want to start selling the lots and or developing them. So our leverage might increase too. So that's me in a quick and dirty.
Great, thank you. Tinka, Trustee Shaw or Castor?
I'm a little confused. So you're saying you don't want to move along with or consider the Pond 3 line?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
The answer is no, for the same arguments I made at the November meeting. And, their point number 1 in Joe's report is factually incorrect. And it was conjecture by one lakes manager, and and empirical tests were taken and nothing was found.
My understanding is that the tests that were taken showed an increase in a certain chemical or biological chemical, and it did not rule out that there was sewer leakage, potentially sewer leaking into Pond 3. And, we've been going back and forth about this, and whether there's a Overton agreement or a DEC Speedies permit agreement, forget that. Let's pretend they don't exist. When we learned about Pond 3 and its potential for leaking into the Pond 3 line, leaking into Pond 3, I've been trying to get this on the docket for 4 months now or 5 months. And I asked Joe to give us a summary, and he gave us this memo last week. And I mean, I'm just gonna ask him straight up. Joe, you're the expert. Do you recommend we look at pond 3 line?
I would recommend it because I feel that that the overall risk reward benefit to the village could be relatively substantial. The proposal that we provided in October, the total number was over $100,000. However, the flow isolation portion was only $4,800. So what I'm recommending is that the cheapest initial investigation be conducted to see if our assumptions have any merit. The Overton project there, currently they're looking at Pond 3. They're also considering a section along either Weewa Lake or Tuxedo Lake. But as I indicated, the amount that they're required contractually to remediate would essentially be one manhole to manhole segment, which is a small fraction of these sections of sewers. So,
Terrific.
so the idea, the reason that we're proposing this is trying to act in the best interest of the village with, as we've discussed, the potential credit coming back to the village through grant sources and low and no interest loans. It might be the best time to invest those funds rather than to defer further costs down the road. However, we wouldn't recommend it if the flow isolation indicates that it's not.
Right, so that would be step 1. Okay, any trustees have any other questions for Joe?
Yeah, David, I'll just point out one issue here is the engineering costs are not covered under our low interest loan or our grant because Weston Sampson is not MBWE compliant. So the project work, i.e. what Arrold Engineering is doing, is applicable, but all engineering expenses are going to be coming out of our general budget. That's just a factual thing.
And that's for any engineering work, right?
Well, then yes.
Okay. All right, Chris, you had a comment.
Yeah, just trying to put this in my own words. So right now, and I'm trying to think in terms of requirements and costs. So right now we have a requirement laid out by the DEC to eliminate some of this I&I. And we're working on that. We have the low interest loans and grants to do that. And at the end of it, it looks like we might come out $121,000 ahead. If we do nothing with you right now, which is what we're proposing, if we met all the DEC requirements, we're still on the path to do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
With the exception of this 4-inch line, we'd have to notify the DEC that it's either going to be remediated at this increased cost, or that the village has deferred it because it's negligible in terms of I&I contribution. So we have not approached the DEC yet because I was looking for board input for how to act on that. Because in my opinion, to me, it's not worth the expenditure compared to allocating it elsewhere.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So if we invest $4,800 to do a flow isolation, we may then be able to convince the DEC that money would be spent and efforts would be better used elsewhere as opposed to addressing this 4-inch pipe, right? So
correct, yes.
You
that's the
believe
general
this could save us money and still meet the requirements laid out by the DEC?
Correct.
Okay, and then all the other stuff about Overton and the other trunks to be investigation, that's kind of other good stuff, other benefits, but it's not really what we're focused on right now because we're really trying to substitute the higher cost of the 4-inch remediation with something else. We don't have something else unless we do this investigation. Is that accurate?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
And the reason that I bring these up instead of deferring the Arrold contract to say subbasins 5, 8, and 16 is that will be a few years out. And we have a provision in the Arrold contract, so they're going to be substantially completed. They're anticipated to be substantially completed this month. They have a 1-year warranty period where their contract is active, and then they're required to come back out and inspect their construction to make sure that there are no issues. And if so, then the contract is complete. So while that 1-year period is still ongoing, the village has the ability to amend their contract and add this work, where once that expires, future work will have to be investigated, designed, and then publicly bid.
Okay, I think trustee McHugh, did you have something?
Yes.
Yeah,
Trustee McHugh.
just tying in with what Chris asked is, if we, with regard to the 4-inch line up at, if we do nothing with regard to that in the short term, you do your analysis, which we've engaged your firm to do in March and April, and we come back and we know that our I&I is still, we're still having issues complying with our speediest permits of 95% of the 400,000 gallons a day.
Mhm.
Then we can propose to the DEC, we don't want to do this 4-inch, but we recognize we have these other areas that are, what we think are high probability areas where there's severe leakage, correct? I'm just wondering about the sequencing, and I think that was Chris's question, is if we don't, and I think we're all collectively agreeing that we don't want to do the 4-inch line right now, because the benefit we're going to accrue from that is negligible at best. Question is, do we wait till your floor analysis in March and April and then go, okay, these are the 3 areas we're going to investigate? Then we've got a compelling argument to go to the DEC and go, look, we're still serious about this. Harold's still engaged with us as a result of that. Our funding's still in place and our grant money is still in place. So to me, this is a question is, I think we all agree on what areas are. I'm just concerned about the sequencing. That's my only point.
Sure, that makes sense. The one thing I would like to add there is that would be an ideal time to also investigate those trunk lines, because that's when the groundwater will be highest, and that's what it didn't implicitly state that, but that was the assumption within this recommendation, that flow isolation for these would be happening around that same time. Reason that you'd like to do that is the lake levels are going to be the highest, the ground levels will be the highest, and presumably the I&I into those sections would be the highest, because the DEC is requiring quantification of pre and post. So it would be in the village's best interest to investigate the pre during the highest events and then demonstrate the largest amount of reduction, as compared to doing the post investigation, getting DEC buy-in, then all of a sudden, if it delays until say June or July, and we have another summer like we did this year, the instances of I&I within those areas are presumably be lower if we're in more drought conditions.
Right. So I mean, not to summarize you, but we table the 4-inch line, do nothing with that. Where I'm a little bit puzzled is with regard to your comments in your note with regard to Overton. They're going to do conducting investigations in March and April, but it seems like there's a lot of steps before they can do any investigation on village property, correct? They would need one, get village buy-in or village consent. We have to get engineering consent. Then we have to speak to the DEC, correct?
That's correct. So there are steps in that process, and based on the low amount of, or the small amount of I&I they need to remediate, they obviously want to do the minimal amount possible. So in all likelihood, they're going to be only investigating a fraction of the Pond 3 line as compared to the entire section. So they even pose the question of, let's say that it's only one manhole to manhole segment that's say 150 feet long, and we find that it's contributing say 9,000 gallons, and we only need to remediate 3,700. Can we only fix a third of the line? Well, technically they can't from an engineering perspective because of the way it works. The joints are every 2 to 3 feet. They fix that section. The water is just going to go to the next closest joints, so they won't see the reduction. So we would require on the village's behalf to do a manhole to manhole section, but they will not. My expectation is they're not going to propose to investigate the entire section, and you're not going to receive the removal that perhaps the village is anticipating by only looking at a fraction. So and the reason I'm bringing this up is the economy of scale is not there. Mobilization costs for these firms are fixed costs, and then they charge per linear foot. So the more you do, the more cost effective it becomes.
Right, but that argument's playing into the village doing more and going against Overton because they have to do the setup.
Right, so I'm looking at it through the vein of if the village wants to utilize the remaining funds that are provided through the EFC grant and the loan that we've talked about. If the village chooses not to do that, then this conversation could be off the table.
Okay. Did you have something else, Trustee Casper?
Well, Joe, you just brought up another question, I guess, in my mind. So we could choose to do nothing, and what happens at $120,000 that we are saving?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the long, and I guess in terms of what costs the village more or saves the village more money, and at the same time reduces I&I?
I'll answer the financial question. Joe is better equipped to answer the engineering. We received the project cost was $456,000, and we got a grant which is 30% of that. If the project comes in $100,000 less than that, it's a flat 30%, so we lose those grant funds. So for every $100,000, we're basically forsaking $30,000 of state money.
I just want to just to be factual, it's 25% is the reimbursement, not 30%, but general premise obviously holds.
Okay, great. Can we wrap this up?
Yeah, and I just have a question, like,
Sure.
What's the deal? We have to take care of it. We have to measure the I-9 on the, the pond 3. Like, why don't we just do it? It's not going to happen until March, April. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that it's on the agenda. So let's thank Joe for his time, and then we'll address it when we get to that agenda item. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trustee Gluck.
Words.
Can't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So when do those funds disappear? When do they have to be utilized by? If we are doing, do they have to be utilized this year, next year?
So my understanding is that the funds are available until the conclusion of the project. So that goes into the warranty period. So that would be 1 year past substantial completion, which is slated for this month. However, to add in additional work, it would need to be reviewed and approved by the EFC and the DEC. And Alan and I have worked closely together on this. We know that the approval process for change orders through the EFC can take some time. So by the time we get the analysis and then propose the new plans, it could run into,
So in
later
effect,
next year.
utilize those funds for construction. We know they can't be used for engineering, but to utilize them for construction, you would have to do the flow isolation this spring.
Yes.
And it's not something that could be deferred to a period later than that and still have those funds utilized.
I deferred if we have to do it, and that's the time. That means we're going to have to go another year without, doing the analysis. I mean, I don't understand. Something we have to do. Let's just do it now.
All right, so let's move on if that's okay. Joe, thank you very much. I'm sorry that it took a lot longer than I thought it would take.
That's quite all right. I anticipated questions, and I just want to remind it when the item comes up. I'm not trying to sell things. In fact, what I'm recommending actually goes against what would actually generate more revenue for engineering. Looking at other subbasins, I specifically put that proposal into tasks, so the board has the ability to authorize only specific tasks on an as-needed basis. So we did that to try to minimize costs being incurred. So
yes, and I appreciate that. That was very, very nice of you. Thank you. Okay, so
Great. Thank you.
we're going to move on to, thank you again, Joe. We're going to move on to reports. I want to just highlight some things. The Communications Committee tower is with the tower we're looking at for Verizon and other carriers is now within reach. We're getting the contracts shortly. And if things go well, we'll be signing an agreement to have the cell tower installed and improve everyone's service. The only bummer is that there's a wait list of something like a year. So we would not even be seeing this thing until 2000, maybe the end of 2021, but probably into early 2022. But it is progress. The police report. We had a car go into the lake, the main lake, recently, and everyone was okay. And it was at the intersection of Turtle Point and West Lake. And so I know the chief has put on his report that he's requesting a guardrail for that area. So I think that, you know, we can talk offline about this, but I think it's probably a very good idea. The Welcome Committee report, we had our first meeting by Zoom last week. We discussed the goals and the scope of the committee, and which is to improve the takeaway information we give to new residents. Right now, some residents don't get it, some do. It's not really in an organized manner, and I think it's very important, and so does the committee, to upgrade it. We have several new residents on the committee, which is terrific. We had a very productive meeting, and we've rescheduled our next meeting for January. So I'll give you an update then. The booth report, it's going very well. There's no setbacks at this time. And I also had on the agenda last month a full village assessment, and I said I would report. So Deputy Mayor Tinka Shaw, former Deputy Mayor Chris Hansen, and I participated in a phone call with John Wollum, who's the Real Property Service Administrator, Southern Region for the New York State Department of Tax and Finance, and with Eric Rusher, who's the Director of Orange County Real Property Tax Service Agency. We reviewed for about an hour and a half the options about doing a full reassessment. We talked about the town role. We talked about a variety of other things, and the conclusion we all came to was that it's not worth doing a reassessment. And I won't go into the details here, but if anyone has follow-up questions for me, please feel free to contact me after the meeting. So let's do public comments. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes and to items on today's agenda. The comment period is now open.
Mayor, this is Jim Hayes speaking.
Hi, Jim.
On the 2nd of December, I sent the board an email in which I offered to work with the lake manager to develop a long-range plan for the treatment of our lakes. I bring it up now, and if you'd like me to read the email that I sent, I will do so. At the time the village hired a lake manager, the village board of trustees made a unanimous verbal commitment to give an annual report to village residents on the state of our lakes. Such a report was to include the work done during the last summer and conditions of the lakes relative to the past year, which of the prior year's objectives were achieved, plans and objectives for next year, together with long-term goals and objectives to improve the ecological health of the lakes. I pointed out that the appropriate time to do this is in the beginning of the year before you start budgeting for next year's work. So the report should be submitted by the board to the community sometime late January, February. I offered to work with the lake manager to prepare a draft of such a report to submit to the BOT in late January or early February. If you agree with this proposal, we will begin this work in early January. A decision on this proposal at the upcoming meeting of the BOT will be appreciated. So I'm proposing that now to the board.
Terrific. Does the board have any comments?
I thought don't they have a report already, a long-term strategy or not?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the board has any questions for Jim while he's here. We're going to pretend this is the report period, not the comment period.
Okay,
I think that the answer to your question is, Tinka, it was being formulated and what had been agreed to, and Jim's entirely correct, was that the lakes manager would give us an annual community update of the state conditions of our lakes, given the empirical data testing that had been done throughout the season. So I think that's what Jim's driving at. Correct, Jim?
Well, it's a little bit more than that, Alan. I think a long-range plan for the treatment of the lakes is something that the board should have. It can be modified annually. It can be reviewed annually. But I think to think only of the next season is not the best way to approach the management of the lakes. I think you have to look forward 10 years. Where do you want to be in 10 years? And that's the way to look at it, because that will be the most cost-effective way to do it.
Right, and but
think
just to be fair, that's what we tasked our lake manager to do, and to do in his annual summary, looking at long-range data trends from CSLAP studies, from our Princeton hydro studies and everything. So we've got data going back X years, so he can look at positive trends, negative trends, and alert us to things we should be looking at and managing and dealing with in the short term and in longer term. So I do think that the scope of what you're articulating is something AJ has been tasked with by the board.
But he has not done it.
He doesn't have all the data in for this year.
No, I mean, over last year, there was no report made. There was no long-range plan given. I'm proposing that I work with him to do this, and this is my proposal. Either you accept it or you don't.
Right, I'm all for it, Jim. We would appreciate it. Speaking for myself.
And I don't have any objections. I think it's important for the community to hear in public the status of our lakes and some recommendations for the future.
The whole village is for it. Go for it, kiddo.
Okay, can you turn off that mic, please, until public comment period? Thank you. Okay, Jim, the two of us agree. How about Tinka, Alan, and Paul?
I'm good.
Okay, all right, well, that's three of us. So yeah, Jim, thank you. I'll meet with you offline and we can go over the technical aspects of it.
A comment there, please.
Pardon me?
Comment there. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to unmute myself quickly enough.
No problem.
So I have no problem with and heartily endorse Jim's involvement in the process and the Lakes Committee involvement in the process of, dialogue with the Lakes manager and coming up with a, program. I would encourage the board to have a board representative involved in that process as well. Often we on the board have, are more cognizant of financial constraints. We're more cognizant of, our responsibilities to the DEC on an ongoing basis. And there's just other things that we as municipal officials have in the forefront of our consciousness that aren't necessarily the same sort of things that Jim has. And I think the combination of those, of that type of personnel involvement would bring better results.
All set?
I would certainly accept that, and I think that's a good idea. I would point out, however, that what I'm proposing is this is a draft. This is a draft for the board's consideration. The board can modify it. The board can reject it. The board can do whatever they want with it. You are the ones who make the decision. But this is a way to look forward and to look back and to spend some time on it. And this is the kind of thing that the board generally doesn't have enough time to do. And I understand that.
Yeah,
It's not a
noted.
criticism of the board. It's an offering of help. That's all.
We appreciate that, Jim. Thank you very much. All right, so let's now go back to the public comment period. Does anyone have any comments?
Yes, I do. Hi, Joanne Hanson. I'm chair of the planning board. It's a little bit awkward because I'm commenting before we get to the new business, but I'm looking at item C, resolution regarding a paper road, and it's not quite clear whether we're planning to buy in a paper road or sell a paper road. But I would make two comments. One, I believe that unless there's a really strong or necessary reason, planning reason for the village to surrender its rights to the roads, I personally would really recommend against that. And I would also just make a note that if a resident is in litigation with the village, I would question why the village might enter into voluntary negotiations with that resident while litigation is going on. So I recognize I'm putting these comments out without really having heard what resolution C really is focused on, but my perspective as a planner or speaking for the planning board is that we should retain all our roads and rights because you're going forward into the future. You don't know what use they may serve for the village, and unless there's a very compelling reason, I would not be selling or surrendering them.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. This is related to the Bruno deal that was made in a prior administration. And so I have the attorney with us, and he's been managing this with Bruno's attorney. And one of the stages that we're required to do with this deal, there's a deadline at the end of this month, requires that. But I'm going to ask Brian Nugent to address that.
Mayor, this is upcoming on the agenda, right? Might it make sense to discuss it at the same time?
We could, yeah. Thank you. Is that all right with you, Joanne? Okay.
We can always invite her back for comment if you want to do so after it's discussed.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments?
Yes, I have a comment, Mayor.
Please.
My first comment is directed to Trustee Kasker. I want to congratulate him in his skill in writing out the mayor's reports. The last one regarding Deborah Matthews was very well written, and it really did her some great credit. So thank you, Mr. Kasker, for helping out with the reports. You're a real asset up there.
I need to correct the record. I didn't touch a report. I will never write a report. I will attend my board meetings and vote appropriately and do appropriate research. So let the record show, Kasker had nothing to do with that. That was all the mayor or somebody else.
Oh, okay. I was just complimenting you on your writing skills. Secondly, I wanted to ask, there's a road to be decommissioned later on in the public meetings. Is this the road that is off of East Lake Road, or are you referring to a different road?
Michael Bruno.
Hello?
Yeah, who are you referring the statement to?
Well, to you, Mayor. It just says the commissioning of a road, and apparently there are a number of roads that you're looking to decommission. Which road exactly are you looking to decommission?
I'm sure you're fully aware that it's the one that we've been discussing for the last 4 months. And the other one that Joanne just referred to is a Bruno Road. And okay, anyone else?
All right, no, hold on a second. I'm not done. And if that's the case, it's very important that we look at the road
in order to gain that membership. And so that's where you start to set some of the timelines.
Okay.
Can we put it on mute, please?
Sorry, my phone's ringing.
Thank you. It's very important that village assets are not sold off willy-nilly. And if village assets if the village residents truly do wish to sell this parcel of very valuable lakefront property, the parcel should be put up at public auction and sold to the highest bidder. Right now, the mayor's friend's bidding $15,000, which is a ridiculously low amount for this desirable parcel. Why is the mayor afraid to use a public auction process to determine the fair market value of this parcel? I think that fair market value is determined by auction process. I myself have a $50,000 bid on that parcel. I will pursue my bid very aggressively. I will not see the village sell and transfer very valuable lands at below market value to the mayor's friends in the backroom deal. I do not, bidding higher price, it will lead to lawsuits here. We will pursue our bid very aggressively. Our plan is to turn it into a public park.
Jerk.
And
This
the
is
mayor
this
should.
little thing, Claudio.
Excuse me, I believe your 2 minutes are up. Can we move on to the next?
Trustee Shaw, please allow me my First Amendment rights.
It's 2
Anyway, we
minutes.
should not, the public village assets should not be transferred at below market value to the mayor's friends in backroom deals. This is taking money out of each and every one of our pockets and transferred to private individuals. I have a $50,000 bid for this piece of land. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak.
You're welcome. Okay, any other comments?
Mayor, can we get Sally's iPad muted? Whoever has control, that's where a lot of this background's coming from.
Yeah, and if I can just, thank you for indulging me. If the East Lake parcel is what is under consideration, and I'm getting confused whether it's Bruno or East Lake, that was my point. I don't think the village should be selling land to anybody. It should retain its rights to those lands.
And to further Ms. Hansen's point, your friend, Mr. Madden, is currently suing the village. We should not enter into voluntary negotiations with anybody who's currently suing the village. Thank you.
Mayor, you're on mute.
Mayor, this is Michelle Lindsay. I guess I'll just go ahead. I just have a question on the resolution to extend the 2015 agreement. Is that the annexation agreement, and is the extension in order to conduct seeker?
Mayor, you're on mute.
Mac, you're muted.
You're still on mute.
Okay,
There you
so,
go.
yeah, good questions, Michelle. Yeah, basically, everything you said is in play. And as Brian said in regard to Joanne, we can address that at that point, and I think he'll be able to answer all the questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. The public comment period is closed, and we're going to go into old business. And I'm pleased that Joe was able to give us that very comprehensive overview, and he recommended that we proceed with the closed circuit TV and I&I analysis of Pond 3, and that would be the sewer line on Pond 3. So I'm going to recommend that we do that. In terms of, there's some issues been raised about the timing of it, and I think the goal is to make the approval, and then the board can decide when to pull the trigger on it. So resolution to approve Weston and Sampson proposal to proceed with the CCTV of Pond 3. May I have a second?
Sorry, David.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, David, just so you're clear, what Joe's proposing is not the CCTV. What he's proposing is a $4,800 expense line item task 3A.
Okay, so that's 3A?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's the flow isolation. And
Got
from
it.
there, depending on what occurs, then you do CCTV. So we're just jumping out the
Yeah,
hammers.
okay, good pickup. Okay, so I resolve that the board approve Weston and Sampson proposal to proceed with 3A flow isolation of the Pond 3 sewer main. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion?
And that, just to clarify, that wouldn't happen until March or April, right?
Well, we're going to decide when. I think that, you know, there was a lot of issues raised between Paul, Alan, and Joe, and we can resolve that and do it obviously as soon as we can. Yes, Alan?
Yeah, just so we're clear, the postmortem, the Overton, and everything is March, April, because it's the highest flows. So that's when we can determine how egregious the INI is.
Right.
So the answer to Tinka's question is yes, it would be March, April.
Terrific. Okay, good. Any other comments?
Yes, one other, Mayor, I'm sorry.
No problem.
A little bit of a nit, but every dollar counts. I think they had a prior comment that task 7, which constitutes $5,000 of the total here, currently is that's for the summary report, and that is a report that's supposed to cover all the items, including the multitude of items that we are not doing. So I think at one point, John was going to go back to Joe and talk about changing that rather than having that be a lump sum, have that be a, you know, as costed basis, so that it might be, you know, up to that total, but we're not going to be charged $5,000 for a report that really only constitutes $500 of this total.
Great, noted. All in favor?
Sorry, can we just, I've got one question is with regard to this, if Joe identified in his letter to the board 3 different areas, one being pond number 3, one being Weewa, and then the other one being Tuxedo Lake. So we're talking 4,800, 4,800, 9,500. If we're seriously endeavoring to do this, and I'm not a big fan of the timing, I believe we need to do all 3 of them so we know which area has the most egregious flows. And then from there, we can make a determination of which of those 3 ones is the best one to address dealing with our INI.
Yeah,
so
that makes perfect sense.
My view is not task 3A, 3B, and 3C should be all one bucket. And we approve all 3 of those if we want to, because we need that data in order to make an informed decision on if we're not going to do the 4-inch line, where we should task our incremental dollars on.
Okay, so yeah, I'm fine with that. Would you like to repeat that for me so I can put in the proper verbiage here?
Yeah, all I would do is just reference the email by Weston and Sampson dated October 16th and identify task 3A.
I'm sorry, December 16th?
December 16th, yep. And reference task 3A, 3B, and 3C.
Okay. Resolution to approve Weston and Sampson proposal to proceed with the, based on the email December 16th, items 3A, B, and C. May I have a second?
I'll second it. It's correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Sorry, so can we just define, not to be persnickety, but can we define it to a sum of 19,100? And we also need to identify where it's coming out of.
Okay, go ahead. You can do it.
Okay, so the sum is 19,1. Give me 1 second to give you an answer to.
Sure.
Line item, David, is 14441.4.
1441.
4.4.
1441.
0.4, correct.
Alan, I believe it's substantially more than 19.1. 19.1 is just the tasks 3s, right? 3A, B, and C?
Yeah, but we're not doing the CCTV. We're just doing the exploratory stuff right now. This
Correct.
sum total on the proposal is $104,000, which none of us are
Right, no,
entertaining.
I understand. Task 3A is flow isolation. Task 3B is flow isolation. Task 3C is flow isolation.
Right.
1 is kickoff meeting. Task 2 is desktop evaluation. And task 6 is GIS system. And task 7 is the report. Right? So those are the tasks.
Sorry. So we're taking the 19, putting on 4,506K basically. So another 10,500 is what you're saying. Correct?
Correct, Paul?
You can add the numbers faster than I can, but yes, it's tasks 1, 2, 3A, 3B, 3C, task 6, and task 7.
Okay, Paul, do you mind calling the resolution, please?
Sure.
I'm actually, I've got notes everywhere now.
That the Board of Trustees authorize the mayor to sign the Weston and Sampson proposal dated 10/16/2020 in the amount of, and let's go back,
29,500.
29,500 regarding the sanitary sewer trunk line investigations for pond number 3, Weewa Lake, and Tuxedo Lake flow isolation, which will include task 1, $3,000 kickoff meeting and site reconnaissance, task 2, $1,500 desktop groundwater evaluation, task 3A, $4,800 pond 3 flow isolation and manhole inspections, task 3B, Weewa Lake flow isolation and manhole inspections, task 3C, Tuxedo Lake flow isolation and manhole inspections, task 6, $1,000 GIS system updates, and task 7, $5,000 maximum summary report on a time and expense basis, with the expense allocated to general fund budget line item. And is this correct? 813-050A, or is that?
No, I do 1441 spot 74, which is the SSES line item.
That line item.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Paul. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Jacob? Unanimous. Thank you very much, guys, for moving this along. I appreciate it. Okay, so we now have the resolution to approve the discontinuance of a portion of a paper road. It's the one off East Lake Road that we've been referring to based on an approach from Sean Madden. Just for the record, there has been no deal accepted, no $15,000 agreement. That is false. And so to approve discontinuance of a portion of a paper road, may I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to address something that Joanne Hanson talked about. What we're doing right now is just discontinuing the use of a paper road. It still remains village property. It's really just erasing a little line on the map that calls it a road. It's just now property, and we can't do anything, sell it until we discontinue the paper road. And that's something that we'll address when we get to it. But right now, the village still retains the rights to the land, and nothing can go forward until the village has another hearing on the sale. Correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Nugent.
No, that's correct.
So just the question is, what parcel are we discontinuing? The narrowly defined
It's the
full
one.
lot?
Yeah, it's the good question. It's the one we had the public hearing on, which is what we've been calling the lower portion of the paper road. I believe it's 15 feet by 100 feet.
Correct.
Understood?
Understood.
Okay, great. May I have a second?
I have.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, there is.
Please.
One further. So I guess I'm just a little, I know legally that we're just talking about the discontinuance of a section of a road, but I know that the only reason that I can think of to do this is that it's going to be associated with some potential future transaction that this board has not really explored or discussed or gone down the line of. So I'm trying to understand why we would do this at this time before we have a sense of a future transaction. If there is no future transaction, we don't need to do this, and we don't need to go through the time and expense and trouble of doing it. If there is a future transaction, and I've heard variants of different kinds of future transactions that there could be that where perhaps the entire road is discontinued or perhaps a different portion is discontinued. So we would have to kind of redo this again anyway, or do a supplement to this anyway. So I just don't really understand the benefit of doing this now as opposed to doing it when we know or have a better idea of what we will be doing. And that way we can have greater confidence that what we're doing is actually going to fit in the best possible way with what we turn out to do in the future, if anything.
Right, no, you're absolutely correct. This is based on a request by the Maddens to purchase the lower portion of the paper road. And we put that in motion during the public hearing. And if we vote on discontinuing it today, then, you know, the floor is still open for the Maddens to come with us with an actual proposal. But before they would do that, I would want to put together an offer with contingents and terms, which I shared with you recently. It doesn't cost us any time and money to pass this today. And so I'm going to move forward with it. And if you feel uncomfortable voting for it now, that's perfectly fine. Any other comments by the board? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. I'll start with A resolution authorizing legal counsel to execute extension of the 2015 agreement between the village and Michael Bruno and Alexander Jokowicz. May I have a second?
So this is the 90-day extension?
I'm sorry, but I'm just a point of order. I'm not sure you called for the nays on the prior vote.
I thought it was, oh, are you a nay?
I'm a nay.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I apologize. I was overwhelmed.
Yeah, there's 2 nays.
Oh, you also? Alan, you were a nay?
Yeah, sorry, correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Paul. All right, so may I have a second on this, please?
Second.
Okay, discussion. I think this might be a time to bring Brian in.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, Mayor, this is, again, a suggestion on our part. This concerns a 2015 agreement between the Village of Tuxedo Park and Mr. Bruno, Mr. Jokowicz concerning, there was several parcels, the agreement, some of it had been carried out at that time. There was a transfer of a discontinuance and a transfer of certain paper roads or portions of paper roads that was done. And then there was a last parcel, which is referred to as parcel 4, which is along the village border, a paper road. And there also was the annexation provisions in this 2015 agreement. These requirements for annexation for 2 parcels, one is known as the Fox Hill Tract, and the parcel numbers are 8125 and 9-1-26. They're both currently Town of Tuxedo parcels. The agreement going further back with the related companies and the Tuxedo Farms project required related companies to annex these 2 parcels into the village. However, the parcels were acquired by Mr. Bruno, and the 2015 agreement, in that agreement, Mr. Bruno agreed that he would take on the obligation of Tuxedo Farms and related companies to annex those parcels into the village. So the annexation is one part of this, which is not currently going on, as there's some secret documentation that needs to be provided. Even though the petitions were filed, the village and the town are both waiting secret documents before that process proceeds. So this proposal is to simply extend that 2015 agreement for 3 months. And the reason for that is that the agreement or provisions of it would otherwise expire December 31st of this year. And I have spoken to Rich Ellsworth, who's the attorney for Mr. Bruno, and it seems that both Mr. Bruno and the village still intend and want to carry out the provisions of that agreement, which include annexing the 2 town parcels And also, Mr. Bruno would be required, which is the next item on the agenda, the village can exercise an option to mandate that he purchase that portion of the paper road that runs alongside parcel 8125, which is the parcel that would be annexed, one of the two parcels. So that's this particular resolution is just to extend the agreement for the 90 days so that all the provisions remain in effect for another 90 days while the parties carry out this process and the annexation moves forward. And there's really no downside that we see to extending the agreement. It just ensures that both parties are committing to continue this process moving forward.
All right, so Brian, do you think we should, you're recommending we go through A and B, and then there was this other issue brought up about the discontinuance. Do you want to address that for us, please? That's C.
Oh yeah, to discontinue for the public hearing. So as part of this 2015 agreement, this parcel 4 is the portion of roadway that we're talking about. Mayor, I think you mentioned the name of the road at some point.
Brook Road.
Yeah, that one portion that remains that's alongside of this parcel that would be annexed, that's referred to as parcel 4 in this 2015 agreement. And the resolution immediately prior to the public hearing on your agenda is to exercise a village option to force or require Mr. Bruno to purchase that parcel. But similar to the Madden situation, before that transaction can be carried out, the village would need to discontinue that portion of parcel 4 as a roadway, as it's currently still considered a paper road on the village maps. So before you could consummate the transaction and the conveyance of parcel 4, the roadway would have to be discontinued. And so that is the resolution that's lettered number C concerning setting a public hearing. Tonight's motions or resolutions wouldn't be discontinuing, you'd only be scheduling a public hearing about the discontinuance in January.
I understood. Where people that want to, are anti-paper road would have plenty of time to go in the public hearing. Okay, any questions for Brian by the trustees?
I have a question. Back in 2015, did they purchase any paper roads or nothing? There was no discontinuance of any paper roads or just a
No, yeah, it's a great question. There were actually 4 roads, 4 parcels altogether. The first 3, 1, 2, and 3 in that agreement were discontinued at that time and were acquired by Mr. Bruno. So this is the only one that wasn't discontinued because the village, I believe, did not want to convey that unless and until Mr. Bruno had ownership of the adjoining parcel that roadway runs along, and that the annexation would move forward to bring that parcel into the village.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brian, just a question of sequencing. Do we want to elect our option first and then after that vote to approve the extension, or you don't see that as being problematic?
You could do it either way you want it. If you want to do the option first, I mean, if you're not going to do the option, then perhaps there wouldn't be a whole, well, then you would need to extend the agreement if it's going to be left to Mr. Bruno, because his option to exercise the purchase requires annexation to be complete by the end of the year, and that's not going to happen. So yeah, if the village exercises its option, then we're just extending the agreement so the parties are on the same page. But I don't think the order necessarily matters. One doesn't determine the other.
But one doesn't mutually exclude the other either.
Right. I'm just saying if you were to choose, to do the option first, I would still recommend the extension. But, if you want to take that order, that's fine.
I think the order here is good, Alan, unless you have a major objection.
No, I mean, I just don't want to give it. We have an option that expires December 31st.
Right.
What we're doing, what this discussion is, we're extending something 90 days. I want to exercise our option and then extend it for 90 days in order for the annexation and everything to be concluded. To me, the sequencing does make a difference, but maybe
I think that we're on the same page on that.
Okay,
Okay.
so then you can move C ahead of B, and I'm sorry, B and ahead of A, and then go for the option first. And this would be the resolution to have the village exercise its option in the 2015 agreement to require Mr. Bruno to purchase the parcel for roadway after it's discontinued, assuming
Okay,
it's discontinued.
that was simple. Okay, any other questions for Brian?
Yeah, well, yeah, do we have the resolutions here? I'm not being.
Yeah, they were distributed to you, and what I'm doing is I'm just referring to the resolution rather than reading the whole thing. I took the name of the resolution requiring the purchase of former village roadway parcel, and authorizing legal counsel to execute extension of the 2015 agreement between the village and Michael Bruno and Alexander Jokowicz.
And Mayor,
And
just
yes,
a procedural matter, we had a resolution pending on A, so if we could just withdraw that, and then you can make the resolution for B on the agenda.
Right, and we're going to follow with A?
Yeah, I would do B and then A as
Yeah,
Mr.
right,
McHugh requested.
Right. Okay, so
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be difficult, but I did not see the resolution. So if they're not lengthy, perhaps you could just read the operative part.
actually, they were distributed, but I'm happy to, let's see, I know Elizabeth has copies. Does anyone have a copy in front of them? Send to Paul?
Yeah, I'll send them to Paul right now.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, I've already sent them to you. So if you could check your email, you'll see they should be in there.
And Alan's sending you a copy now, Paul.
Oh, I have so many emails.
Yeah, they came from Shannon at Brian's firm.
Right, from Brian's firm.
Yeah.
She's the one that really does all the work.
Exactly. All right, so you want to take a moment, Paul?
Sure, thank you. They're here. That's great. Super.
Oh, great, okay. So I'm going to proceed with these resolutions. A resolution to approve the discontinuance of a portion of a paper road. May I have a second? Oh, I've got it. God bless you. Thank you. Okay. Let's go with resolution and option requiring the purchase of former village roadway parcel. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I ask
Any
a
nays?
question? I'm a little confused about that. I thought it was, so the parcel, is it parcel 4 is a roadway?
Yeah, and by the way, let's just correct that. That's my error. It should not be former village roadway. It's still considered a roadway right now. So resolution requiring the purchase of village roadway parcel is what it should read.
Got it.
But that's parcel 4?
What we call parcel 4 in the 2015 agreement, yes.
But don't we have to discontinue the road first?
Well, this is only authorizing the village to exercise the option, to notify the other side that we're exercising it. But yes, we can't actually effectuate that purchase or conveyance until there's a discontinuance. And
Right.
then we would go through with the
Right,
transaction.
and take that's going to be the third resolution, and that's going to require setting a public hearing.
Right, okay.
So we're not going to make a decision on discontinuing that road until after the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll read resolution adoption requiring the purchase of village roadway parcel. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any nays? Was that, who, everyone voted? And
Believe so.
everyone voted yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, a
And
resolution,
Alan was the second there?
Yes.
pardon me?
Was trustee McHugh? I'm sorry, trustee McHugh was the second
Yes,
there?
he was.
Thank you.
Okay, resolution authorizing legal counsel to execute extension of the 2015 agreement between the village and Michael Bruno and Alexander Jokowicz. May I have a second?
Mayor, just to be clear, that should be, you're going to be executing it. I'll be drafting and you'll be executing.
Okay, you better look at the title of your thing. Okay, authorizing
It should be, I think the title might be wrong, the be it resolved should have it correct, but we're going to authorize me to draft with counsel from, opposing counsel, and then authorizing you to execute the document.
Okay, as I'll accept that. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
No.
Okay, and finally, resolution to schedule a public hearing for 6:45 PM on Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, to discontinue a portion of a paper road enabling the village to proceed with requiring purchase of former village roadway parcel. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, and now we're moving on to some, I hope to be simpler stuff. Resolution to approve the Village of Tuxedo Park's continued membership of Tree City USA. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, is that trustee Shaw seconding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If I would suggest that Christopher Gow, who's head of the Tree Advisory Board, might be a good person to just enlighten people what exactly the function of the Tree City USA is.
Sounds great. Are you available, Chris?
Yes, the Tree City USA is something we've been a member of for 4 years now. And basically, it's the same mission as the Tree Advisory Board in the promotion and encouragement of the stewardship of our trees. It involves planting trees, encouraging the use of native trees, and educationally telling people about the benefits of them. After 5 years, the advantage of being a member is that there'll be more grants open to us, which will allow us to get free trees to plant, which is important very much at the moment because of the emerald ash borer. I'm not sure if you've been noticing the streaks of bark that have been flaking away on trees, hundreds of trees in the park. If you haven't, well, probably not tomorrow is a good time to look for it, but a Friday, you'll see there's brown streaks on the trees. That's the woodpeckers that are attacking the larvae, the eggs that this invasive species, the emerald ash borer, is laying its eggs on the bark. When the eggs hatch, the larvae bore into the tree, into the transportation tissue, which disrupts the movement of nutrients and water, girdling it and causing tree death. So we've got most of the ash trees in the park are going to die. So this is an important initiative for us to replant, to replace these trees, and also for us to know about what to do. The insect itself, it's the emerald ash borer, the disease spreads slowly. The super spreader of the disease is us. It's by moving infected trees, by moving firewood, that's spreading the disease. And so we should restrict the use of moving the firewood. And also, if you do have a potentially infected tree, don't rush to have it cut down. It could be what's known as a lingering ash. It could be a rare one that has a genetic resistance to it, and that we need to know. So if you do have an ash tree that's surviving, please let us know so we can contact the researchers about this cultivation of future resistance. And also, if you, when trees do die, obviously the same thing, plant with native trees and obviously away from power lines. That's a good tree etiquette, and that's what Emily Post would tell us.
Thank you.
And just finishing with Emily Post, she would also school us.
Hey, Christopher.
She would school us on proper Zoom etiquette, which, as Joanne says, means muting your computer and your phone when you're speaking, or when you're not speaking, and certainly when you're going to the bathroom.
Okay, all set, Christopher?
All set, thank you.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you. Okay, so a resolution to proclaim the April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Resolution to proclaim Debbie Matthews Day. Do you have that paragraph, Elizabeth, that we discussed?
Yes, I do.
Do you mind reading that as some background?
I don't mind reading it. You just have to give me a minute to
Sure.
get it.
I can actually fill in. We had a ceremony at the village office Fridays ago which was Debbie's last day, first day of retirement. And I read a proclamation into the record that December 4th will be known as the Debbie Matthews Day, and that every December 4th, we would make sure we put some sort of acknowledgement to Debbie on our website. May I have a second?
Second.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, terrific. Thank you.
So was that,
resolu-
I'm sorry, was that Trustee McHugh seconding?
That was me. Paul.
That was Paul.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No problem. I'll hesitate. So the next is resolution to adopt the new retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
You know,
Aye.
just a question, it's pretty standard, right? They just give you a list of how many years you have to keep certain things and then the rest you can just chuck.
Yes, and I believe it's a new standard, which is why we're addressing it now. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, this is being replacing what was known for years as the MU1 retention schedule. So they've renamed it and established a new schedule. There's a significant number of changes to the schedule about, time periods, and it kind of updates more technical documents that may not have existed in the past. So all municipalities need to adopt it
Right.
by January
Right.
1st.
Thank you. It's a good time too, because we're cleaning out all the files and reorganizing all the files in the village after Debbie left. We're also going to be bringing a shredder company down to the village office area, and we'll be shredding a lot of documents, and I'll announce that. So if anybody in the community has documents that need to be shredded, we'll let you know.
Hey,
All
Brian?
in favor? Yes.
Right, just a question for Brian. Brian, does that also include an index schedule as well, or just record retention? Do you know?
Yeah, it's mostly just records. I mean, when you say index, what are you referring to?
Well, in other words, a sort of a standardized indexing of how files are organized and where things are kept.
No, not at all. It strictly is a schedule showing you the type of record, and then after each category saying how long that document should be retained at a minimum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. May I call the roll? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, thank you very much. A resolution to accept the police department equipment disposal request from the chief. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
nays? Thank you. A resolution to renew the NEAMI/PERMA, PERMA contract. May I have a second?
Did we get anything with regard to that in costing?
Let me get a second first.
Sorry, second.
Mhm. Thanks. Any discussion?
I don't recall seeing any costing or anything associated with that. Am I right?
Okay. Elizabeth, do you know if this was distributed?
I believe it was. I mean, certainly it was included. Is it not included in the supporting documentation that went out?
I don't know. Alan likes
maybe
to
not.
see things a little
No.
sooner. Are you familiar with it, Alan?
Unfortunately, no, and I don't think it's anything we cannot approve. So, I mean, is there a set deadline, Elizabeth, of
Yeah, that
December
was my
5th?
next question. Do we have a
Yeah.
deadline, or can we table this?
I think we can table it.
Okay, thank you. So what we'll
Or
do,
maybe, sorry.
I was just gonna say, Alan, what we'll do is get together after the meeting, not tonight, but we'll get together after the meeting and look at it and see what we might think. And if there is a deadline, we'll call a special meeting. Reasonable?
Reasonable, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Resolution to adjust account number 121 in the amount of $402.39 for consumption usage recorded in error. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just as a background, this was a meter read by the water department was inaccurately recorded, and the customer was billed the $400 odd more than they should have been billed. The meter was reread, it was corrected, and as our standard procedures, anything over $75 has to go to board approval. That's what this is. So.
Very clear. Okay, so did we call the roll yet?
No.
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, resolution to accept the resignation of Police Officer Ryle. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Do we have any background why he or she left?
Chief?
Yes, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so Officer Ryle took on full-time employment as a security guard, and he can no longer give us the hours. So he's resigning for that reason.
Was he part of our probationary?
No,
or
he
a
was
long-time officer?
he was hired by the last chief back in 2016, I believe. Yeah, I believe in 16 or 17.
So my only question is, with regard to our agreement that you and Brian drafted, is that applicable or not in a compensation for the village?
There was no agreement in place back then.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you. I'm going to call the roll unless there's more questions. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, thank you. And we're going to table the resolution to approve the minutes because we want to take a little more time to complete them. And thank you. And I would like to adjourn to executive session. I resolve, is someone talking?
Yes, I'm sorry. Just an item I think didn't make it to the agenda, but we need to approve the management letter to send back to the to our auditors.
Right, and I've read it and I have no problem with that. Did anyone not get a chance to read the auditor letter that was sent to Arias? It was written by Alan, Elizabeth, and Paul, what, a couple days ago, Paul?
Yeah.
I know you
Monday.
distributed it, yeah. So does anyone have any questions about that?
I didn't see it, but
I think you got it today.
no.
I believe I saw an email where Paul sent it to you today, but I'm not sure. Trustee Castor, do you have any questions?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
And Alan and Paul, you recommend we do it?
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I and Elizabeth spent 2 hours going through our preliminary draft financials, asked our questions, and then this was Aris asked us to respond to a couple issues where there were deficiencies. That's what Paul had issued on Monday, and it's basically endeavoring to correct our deficiencies.
Right. This is the same letter we did last year and the year before.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it. So if you two recommend it, I'm fine with passing it. Are you uncomfortable doing that, Tinka?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Chris, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. So Paul, would you please read that resolution?
I don't think we have one, but.
No, we don't. No, we don't. That's why I'm relying on your expertise.
All right, here we go. Resolve that the draft management letter in the form previously distributed to the trustees be approved and submitted to the village's auditors.
Second?
I'll second it.
Second, sorry.
Okay, I believe we've had our discussion. I'll call the roll. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Thank you very much. And we're going to, I'm going to move that the board adjourn to executive session to discuss a particular employee in litigation. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? And I would also like to invite the chief in to the beginning of our session to participate in the discussion of a particular employee without objection.
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we did that already. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. If you could take us into a private area, Elizabeth, that would be appreciated. And we'll be re-entering the public meeting to adjourn or pass any resolutions that might be necessary. Thank you, everyone, for those that aren't staying. It was a pretty technical meeting, but I'm glad you joined us. Thanks.
Oh. I'm sorry.
Yeah, join. Okay.
Oh, good. It is working. Okay.
Now
Yeah,
we're
I still have to get you in there. Sorry.
I know you have one person that's not a trustee, a couple of people still there.
Okay.
Do I have to leave?
No, you just wait there and I'll put you in. And Chris, sorry, I'll get you in there now, Chris. Okay, I think that's it.
There's no further business. So I resolve to adjourn this meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Merry Christmas. Happy
Happy
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Go build a snowman.